Today, we are going to build a personalized pricing page like this one, where you can personalize every element from the title to the card and everything in between. Let's see how I configured this page. Croct has a concept called component. Basically, every part of your user interface can be configured as a component. So this card can be a component, this title can be another component, and the combination of these two components can be another component. So I have created two components here, one for representing the plan cards and another one for representing the whole section that combines the title and the cards. And I have also created a slot that represents the page itself. So once I have created my components and slots, I can create my first experience to change the content that I want to show to my audience. For this demonstration, I have created an experience that highlights this card for the startup founders. Let's see it. Creating an experience in Croct is a 1-2-3 process. In the first one, you have to define the audience you want to talk to. The second one, the slot. So in this case, the pricing page. And in the third one, you can actually define the content. So as you can see, all the content we are seeing here comes from this form. So I can control pretty much everything. For example, if I want to change and show annually selected by default for my startup founder audience, I can just switch it here, save, and then we can immediately preview it. As you can see, in this preview, we are seeing annually selected by default, whereas here we are seeing monthly. We can also see in the bottom right corner of the page our widget in action, showing the experience we are previewing, the audience, and the content. I could click here to leave the preview, but I close the page instead. Let's see how I build this using Croct and Next.js for server-side rendering. The first step is installing our SDK. Once you have installed it, you can import the Croct provider, which will take care of initializing the SDK. And we are all set. Seriously, everything you need to implement a page like this is to call the fetch content function, passing the slot ID, and then pass the result to the pricing section that actually handles the rendering part. Everything else is handled by Croct. One of the best parts of Croct is the developer experience for sure. For example, this fetch content here is strongly typed, which means that if I ask for completion here, I can see all the attributes defined in my components with the associated types, so I can catch bugs before going to production. Now let's move on to the first of the 6 topics I have selected for covering this video, which is about localization. To fetch content in different locales, all you need to do using Croct is to pass a preferred locale. In my case, I will specify Spanish. For real-world scenarios, you probably won't use a hard-code value like this. It will probably come from a prop or the user profile. But let's keep like this for the sake of simplicity. And as you can see, the page is now in Spanish and no longer in English. Is right. All right. The next feature we are going to cover is called dynamic content, and it is one of my favorites. It allows you to define content in real time. The best part is that there is nothing else you need to implement to use it. You may have not noticed, but we are already using it right here. Whenever you are using Croct, you can choose between entering an static value or switching to dynamic values. And you can use basically any SQL to generate your value. In our case, we are using the user's local time to select among these 4 message variations based on the time of the day. And as a result, I'm seeing this one because here in my local time, it is afternoon. The next 2 features focus on addressing 2 main challenges when it comes to personalization in the headless CMS. The first one is how to give autonomy to your team without the risk of breaking your application. Croct solved this with a mechanism called auto-version. Basically, we track all the breaking changes and bump your slot version whenever we find one. So for example, if you remove an attribute or change its type, this version will be incremented by 1. We can see this in practice here because in the first version I implemented for this page, we did not support selecting the frequency selected here by default, and I have introduced this in the second version. So if I change this to the version 1 and I ask for completion, I can see that there is no default frequency listed here. However, if I change this to the second version, I can see it's right here. So behind the scenes, Croct will serve the latest compatible version with the deployed version of your application. So your team can keep evolving, the schema can keep delivering fast while you have the guarantee that your application won't break. The next feature is about resilience, or in other words, how you can ensure that your application will remain working, even in worst case scenarios like an outage, a maintenance window, or any internet connectivity issues. For this, the SDK provides a mechanism called Fallback, where you can specify a static content which will be used in case it fails to retrieve the content in real time. The next feature is called context because it provides a way for you to send information from your application. Let's say you are running a software as a service, and your subscription is based on the number of seats. In this case, you want to target accounts with 5 or more seats. You can do so by specifying the context here. In our case, we are defining a custom attribute called seats. In this case, it is hard-coded here, but again, in real scenarios, it would probably come from the props or from any other data source like your database. And once you define this, you can refer to this attribute like this. So here we are defining a new audience, and we are targeting the users or accounts with 5 or more seats. In this last part, we're going to cover how to save and retrieve data from Croct. For this, we are going to build this widget that asks for permission to collect data. The idea here is whenever the user hits this button, this banner should no longer appear here. I have built this simple page here to help us identify whether the user has granted consent or not. The implementation is pretty simple. We are just running a SQL query, getting the result, and passing to this component that is responsible for rendering this page here. So let's see how it works. So by clicking here, the banner should disappear. And by refreshing the page, it should not appear again. All right. So if you go back to the previous page, we should now see yes instead of no. Let's see how we are saving this information in the user profile. For this, we have this component called privacy banner, and here is the button we just clicked on. So we have an on-click listener that whenever the user clicks the button, we are adding this custom attribute to the user profile, which we can then retrieve in this page using this SQL query. And that's it for today. Thanks.